All right, folks, welcome back. Time for our next 6.5 Creedmoor video. We are going to shoot a ton of ammo in this video. We're going to load and shoot a bunch of stuff. The first two 6.5 Creedmoor videos have gone really well. Getting lots of views, that's good. People seem to be interested. So today it's just time to continue our exploration. The problem, in that last video, I may have mentioned some certain thing that I wanted to test in the next video. I think it was probably the 130 grain Sierra Matchking. I might have said we were going to test that next. Also, since that last video, I have received my box of 135 grain Burger Classic Hunters. I'm really interested in trying these guys out. But the problem right now is we've only fired 30 pieces of our brass. We shot 30 hand loads in the last video. And I don't really want to get into any serious load development until we've fire formed our brass, because your case capacity changes between new brass and resized brass. And actually that's something we'll test here in this video. We'll do a case capacity check of some new brass, some fired brass, and some resized brass just to see what the difference is. But the main goal for today's video is to go ahead and fire our 70 more pieces of new brass. So that'll basically get our entire, brass stockpile here into a once fired state, and then we can move forward from there. So that's kind of the plan for today. Fire form 70 more pieces of brass. So in the last video, our results with our factory ammunition, the Hornady American Whitetail and the Federal Non-Typical Whitetail, were pretty disappointing. They just didn't really shoot very good groups. So I also want to shoot some more groups with those guys. Maybe towards the end, like we'll shoot all 70 of our hand loads, get a better idea of how the gun's shooting, and then go back to the factory ammo one more time and see if it still shoots crappy. In that last video, these were the first rounds we shot through the gun. So maybe once we get the barrel fouled up and get a nice coating of copper laid down in that guy, maybe the factory ammo will tighten up as well. I don't know. We'll find that out in today's video program as well. A couple more things I've got. I did pick up the 26 insert, the number 26 insert for my bullet comparator. If I can find the stupid thing. Oh, right there. It's right in front of me. So yeah, this is the Hornady bullet comparator that you clamp on your calipers, and you can measure overall length to the ogive of your bullets instead of the tip of the bullets. But I had bought the basic insert kit, and it didn't come with the 6.5 millimeter insert. So I've got that. We'll play around with that some today. Another thing I picked up was a modified case for the Hornady overall length gauge. So in our last video, I used, this guy. This is a case that I had chopped a slit in with a Dremel tool, and we were using this to try and figure out our maximum overall length with different bullets. But now that we've got this modified case, which is just drilled and tapped so that it will fit on a Hornady overall length gauge or a Stony Point tool. They used to be called Stony Point tools. And actually this one right here, this is my this is my grandfather's old one, and it actually is a Stony Point. Screws right on there. Yeah, there you go. Stony Point OAL gauge. So we'll play around with this guy a little bit today as well. I ordered the tap so that I can tap cases myself in the future. And I think once I get the tap, I'll probably do a video specifically on this tool. And we'll talk a little bit about it in this video, but there are some things you need to keep in mind and some inherent inaccuracies when using a modified case like this. So that's another thing we'll talk about. And then after that, we'll start loading up some rounds. I've picked out 3 bullets. The first of which is the 143 grain Eld X. In our last video, our first group with the Eld X was a .878 inch group. Pretty decent. Last video we shot it with H4350. Here in this video, I think we'll go with some Reloder 17. We had good luck with Reloder 17 in the last video, so we'll go ahead and shoot some of it with the 143. I also wanted to shoot some of the 123 grain Sierra Matchkings. I've got a bunch of these bullets. I've got a big old pack of 500 of them. So these will make for some good ammo. Hopefully they'll shoot really well. I expect them to shoot well. But I kind of want to get some rounds through the gun, right? I want to get this brass fire formed before we go back and test more with the heavier bullets. Because my stockpile of the lighter bullets like this is a lot greater since I've been shooting 6.5 Grindle for a couple of years, so these lighter bullets I have more on hand. With this guy, I think I want to shoot some Winchester 760. This is the old label. The new Winchester label is a little bit different, but it's all the same stuff, Winchester 760. This is also known as H414. Yeah, like a Hodgson H414, they're the exact same powders. And if you see them on the shelf sometimes, you can actually pick up the bottles and look at the lot numbers. Where the heck is the lot number on this one? It's normally right there. But yeah, a lot of times even the lot numbers will match up from H414 in Winchester 760 and also H110 in Winchester 296. Not exactly 6.5 Creedmoor powders, but a similar sort of thing where they brand certain powders with both the Winchester and the Hodgson branding. The third bullet I want to test for today is the 129 grain Nosler Accubond long range. This is another bullet where I've got several hundred of them in my stockpile and they've never shot well for me. They're not cheap bullets. They've got a nice high ballistic coefficient and they're nice looking bullets, but in my Grindle, at least, I was never really able to get the accuracy I was looking for out of these guys. They shot okay. They shot well enough for me to hunt with them, but never really saw the pure precision that I was hoping for. And I guess that's always a balancing act with a bullet, especially a hunting bullet, because, you know, this is a bonded hunting bullet. I haven't got to shoot anything with it yet, but let's assume that this has outstanding terminal performance, right? Shoot a deer, it does impressive damage. It acts just like a bullet should. Right? In that case, I mean, you have to be a little bit forgiving. Okay, maybe it's not the most accurate bullet I can shoot, but if it's the best performing bullet I can shoot, it might be worth, you know, being the choice. So that's always kind of a balancing act there. Picking bullets that you think are going to perform the way you want on an animal versus just the purely best shooting, smallest grouping bullet. For this bullet, we're going to shoot Reloder 15. A little bit fast for 6.5 Creedmoor, right? This is a pretty fast burning powder. But looking at the Nosler load data for their Accubond, they showed this is the most accurate powder. So we're going to give this bullet every chance to impress us here today, hopefully. So I'll tell you what, for starters, let's do a couple case capacity measurements, just for the heck of it, because I'm curious. All right, before we can measure case capacity, I need to resize a case, because three types of cases I want to check case capacity on here real quick is a brand new piece of brass, a fired piece of brass, and a resized piece of brass, just to see what the differences are. So let's go around to our full-length sizing die, which I think we set it up in the last video, but that's no fun. Let's go ahead and just start from scratch. So to set our sizing die properly, I want to use the Hornady Headspace Comparator kit. This is the D400. We're going to talk about this here in just a minute. There is some confusion as to which insert you should use for 6.5 Creedmoor, or at least there is in my eyes, and that's one of the next discussions I want to have. But for the time being, I'm going to use this 400. This is what I had used in the last video. The number I'm seeing here is 1.536. So I want to screw my sizing die down until this goes to either 1.535 or maybe even 1.534. So the shoulder of our case is going to get touched by the sizing die and pushed down just a little bit. So I've taken it down until it touches and gone just enough to kind of take the slack out of the press. That's where it's set right now. So the press isn't like camming over into the press or anything like that. It's just taking out the slop. So let's see what number that gets us. I should probably write down my number here so I don't forget it. 1.536. Yeah, that one says 1.535. Yeah, 1.536 was our number. Or I'm seeing every once in a while 1.5355. I'm going to use a little bit of Redding Imperial sizing die wax to lube the case. Up and in. Down and out. Still seems to be 1.536, so I don't think we quite hit that shoulder yet. I'm going to screw the die down a tiny little bit. And I'll tell you what, that expander ball felt a little bit rough on that last sizing, so I'm going to get a little bit of lube inside of the neck of this case. and then a fresh thin coat on the outside. So back through one more time. Yep, felt a whole lot smoother that time with the lube in the neck. Yeah, I'm seeing 1.535 now, so we just barely touched it. So one more just tiny little tweak and one more trip through. 1.5345 is what I'm seeing mostly. So it's a long 1.534. So that's good. So our die is now set to bump the shoulder on a fired case about 1 to 1.5 thousandths, which should be just fine for our bolt action rifle. So now let's get to measuring case capacity. Now, since we're going to be filling these cases with water, I need to put a primer back in there. I probably shouldn't have popped the primer out of that case I just resized, but I didn't really feel like taking the trouble to pull out my decapping pin. So I've got, let's see, I've got a fired piece, still got the spent primer in it. I've got the piece that we just resized with the primer popped out of it. Let me throw one in this guy. And we've got a new piece of brass with, of course, no primer in it. So let me throw one in this guy. So I want to start out by taking the empty weight and recording that for each piece. 166.4, 166.3, 167.3. And I've got some water. I've got a syringe, so I'll fill my syringe with water. Just to be certain, I'll double check the weight. Yep, 166.4. Then I just want to fill this case up with water. And what you got to be careful to be consistent about is, the surface tension of the water, you can make it so that, there's like a big bubble of water or it's concave. You just have to be consistent. Make them all look exactly the same when they're full. And you also want to make sure you don't have any drips of water coming down the side of the case or anything like that. So this is now a case full of water to my normal level of fullness. And then we just take a measurement. 218.6. And let's see, 218.6 minus 166.4 equals 52.2. So our fired case held 52.2 grains of water. Now, one thing I did check on these three cases a minute ago, I don't know why I didn't put it on camera, but I did check their overall length, or the case length, and they were all pretty close. There wasn't enough difference for me to really freak out about it. Fired case is about 1.908. Resized case is 1.911. So 3 thousandths of difference, and then I think this guy was in the middle. 1.908. So I don't think 3 thousandths of additional length, which means our water level, if I do my part right and get it just looking the same, will be 3 thousandths of an inch higher. I don't think it would make a tenth of a grain difference or enough to register on a scale or really make enough difference in this measurement. At least I don't think. All right, there's our sized piece full of water. 218.1. All right, there's our new piece. And I'll tell you what, while I've got all this crap out, I might as well grab a piece of our Hornady and our Federal brass from our factory ammo and see what sort of case capacity they have. There's a Hornady and a Federal. All right, I finished my measurements. I got the water off the bench before I spill it, and I've done the math. And the numbers are pretty darn interesting here. First of all, let's stick with our brass, which is Starline small rifle primered brass. I maybe should have mentioned that. That's our primary batch of brass, Starline small rifle brass. The fired cases held 52.2 grains of water. The sized case held 51.8, and the new case held 50.9. So it's nice that our capacity is right around 50. Makes it easy to kind of double our numbers and think in terms of percentages. So fired brass versus new brass, we see 1.3 grains of difference. So 2.5 or 3% difference in total case capacity between new brass and fired brass. I was surprised by our sized brass number. I thought it might be a little bit lower. We only see 4/10 of a grain of water difference between fired brass and sized brass. So that would be less than 1%. So I don't necessarily have like some big overreaching aha sort of point to make here, other than to say, this is kind of the reason why I want to go ahead and get all of our brass fire formed before we get into any semi-serious load development. Because the new brass does have a good bit less capacity than the fired and sized brass. How much difference that really makes? Probably not that much. Now, for the truly shocking stuff, let's look at the capacity of our fired Hornady and Federal brass alongside our Starline brass. Hornady has the most capacity at 53.3 grains of water. Our Starline is second at 52.2. And Federal has the least amount of capacity at 50.7. Now, if we look most to least, so Hornady at 53.3 and Federal at 50.7, so that's what, 2.6 grains of water difference. That's a 5% difference. Now that, I would say, is significant. Like if you were shooting Hornady brass and was going to Federal brass, you might have some problems, especially if you've got yourself a nice, hot, high velocity, crazy load worked up in Hornady brass, and then you just go ahead and dump it into some Federal brass and hit the range, you're going to have some problems. What I found also interesting is our new Starline brass, the capacity was 50.9. So the fired Federal brass has less capacity than a brand new piece of Starline. That just blows my mind. Now, let's look at the weight of the actual cases. This is what kind of blew me away the most. The Federal was 178. This does include a primer, which can kind of throw the numbers off a little bit. And let's see, our Starline is a small primer, where the Hornady and Federal are large primers. But whatever, there's some extra variables at play here. But still, that Federal brass being 178 grains, Starline being 167, and Hornady being all the way down at 155. Like that 23 grains of weight difference between Hornady and Federal brass seems like a ton. So the lesson I'm taking from this is, man, be careful with some Federal brass. This is a lot like your situation in 308, right? If you load 308, it's everybody's favorite advice to give. Like, oh, be careful if you're using military brass. 7.62 by 51 brass. It's thicker and has less case capacity, and you can blow your face off. Well, I guess people can take that same advice, substitute in Federal 6.5 Creedmoor brass, and go out and warn everybody, because it does seem to be significantly less case capacity than the others. So I'm feeling pretty good. That's another reason I kind of like the Starline here. We're in the middle, right? Pretty small sample size with only 3 brands, but feels good to kind of just be in the middle. So there it is. That's my justification of why we want to go ahead and get all this brass fire formed before we move forward anymore. The next topic I want to talk about is the Hornady Headspace Comparator, and which insert is the proper one to use. Now, in the last video, I used the D400 insert, and the numbers on these, like, the 400 there, if we grab our calipers, the inside of this guy, so the inside of this guy is about 0.4, more or less. So there you go. That guy is 4/10 of an inch. So what I did, instead of looking on the Hornady website or anything, I just went straight to the SAMI drawing for 6.5 Creedmoor. And if we look at this guy here, you can see that for the cartridge, the Headspace datum line is defined here as 0.4 inches. So the cartridge uses 0.4 inches officially. I have a Headspace comparator kit that has an insert that is 0.4 inches. Now, it was a no-brainer, man. I'm going to use a 0.4 incher. That way, the measurements I take, I can actually look at the SAMI drawing and see how close they are. I will warn you that it never does seem to line up just right. The numbers I always get off of cases seem to be a little bit smaller than the SAMI drawing says they should be, but we'll get to that here in a minute maybe. But back to the main point. So that's why I chose a 0.4. And someone commented in the last video that the Hornady website, or the Hornady Comparator kit, which if we look right here on the back, it's got a bushing sizing chart with a, you know, a whole list of a whole bunch of cartridges. This is an older set that I've had for quite a few years. It doesn't have 6.5 Creedmoor on here, but if you go and look at the same list on their website, it does include 6.5 Creedmoor. And they say that you should use the .375 insert. This guy right here, this is the C375. And you know what? If you grab a case and look at where it sits on the shoulder, it does seem to be in a pretty nice spot. Of course, the 400 goes down a little bit farther and is closer to the actual shoulder. So I don't know what to do here. I want to use the 400. And I don't know if that's a mistake on Hornady's part for calling out the 375 or if there's some good reason for it. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and use the 400. But if you can make even a halfway decent argument for me to actually use the 375 like Hornady says I should, I am open to listening to it. So I could be easily persuaded. If you want to try, hit me up down in the comments. But for now, yep, I think we're just going to use the 400. I'll tell you what, I'm kind of getting bored with talking. Like I really want to get to loading. Seems like we're spinning our wheels here a little bit. I think we've covered some good stuff. I'm happy to have talked about it, but we'll save this. We'll save the Hornady overall length comparator for the next video maybe, because for today's video, I'm going to be going with recommended overall lengths in all of our loadings. We're not going to get cute with overall length. We're not going to try and load them long, get closer to the lands or anything like that. We're going to go with recommended overall length with all these guys. So yeah, we'll talk about that guy later. So let's talk about load data. Of course, we're using new Starline brass with small rifle primer pockets. There they are, just like last time. And just like last time, we are going to continue to use the, if I don't spill them everywhere, the CCI 450 Magnum small rifle primers. We went over this a little bit in the last video. This is just what we're going to use here for a little while, at least. And from the results of the last video, it's looking like a good choice because the standard deviation numbers we saw with our velocity were beyond amazing. They were excellent. And primers can certainly have a big impact on that. So I'm liking our choice so far. We're going to leave primer discussion for later and possibly much later here in the 6.5 Creedmoor world. But that's going to be our primer for today. So our first bullet, the 143 grain Hornady Eld X. We shot this guy with H4350 in the last video. The groups were halfway decent. One thing I didn't really talk much about in the last video, there was so much going on that it was kind of hard to process everything. But in the last video, we shot it at 2.8 inches of overall length, which was the Hornady recommended overall length. And then we also shot it at 2.9 inches of overall length. The group opened up a little bit. But if you remember that video, I was trying to shoot the gun fast to see if I could get some heat, a lot of heat in the barrel and see how much our groups were going to grow. So that might have been part of it. I don't know. But for today, like I said, magazine length, well, not our magazine length, but standard length of 2.8 inches. Shot a really nice group. So that's what we're going to stick with today. That's the Nosler book. I don't want that. I want the Hornady book. 143 grain Eld X, 2.8 inches of overall length. With Reloder 17, they show a charge range of 35.3 to 41.3. What's super aggravating is Alliant has just terrible load data on their website, and they don't have 6.5 Creedmoor. They kind of tease you. There's a spot that says 6.5 Creedmoor, and then there's no data. So I don't really have another good comparable. If we go to the Sierra load data and look at the numbers they use for the 142 grain Matchking, that's the closest comparable we've got. They show a max charge of 42.1 grains. So they show 42.1. Hornady shows 41.3. I want to play it safe. Let's knock it down to 40.5 being our max charge. So let's shoot 39 39.5, 40, and 40.5. Now, the other thing I should mention here with the Eld X, I only want to shoot 20 of these guys. We're going to shoot 25 of each of the others, but we've got 70 pieces of brass, so somebody needs to be the odd man out here, and that's going to be the Eld X. So for our 4 different charge weights, I want to shoot up to 40.5. So we're going to shoot 39, 39.5, 40, and 40.5. So our starting charge there of 39 is about in the middle of the range for the Hornady load data. So I'm hoping that's going to be a nice safe place to start. Hopefully we're not getting ourselves into trouble by starting too hot. And you know, in these early videos, we need to cast a wide net. We need to cover a lot of ground. As we learn more, like, you know, once we're on our 5th video of shooting Reloder 17 with 142, 143 grain bullets, we'll start getting a feel for how far we can push it. But at this point, you know, we're working from nothing. This will be our first time with Reloder 17 and a bullet this heavy, so trying to play it safe. And I think a 39 grain starting charge should be fine. So our second bullet is the 129 grain Nosler Accubond long range. Nosler does have data for this guy. They do show Reloder 15 being the most accurate powder tested. They show charge weights from 35 to 39 grains. So I want to start in the middle, 37.0 as our starting charge, and we'll work our way up to their max. So 37, 37.5, 38, 38.5, and 39. You know, a powder this fast, we're not going to set the world on fire with velocities here. It just burns too fast to get those sorts of numbers. But maybe we can find some accuracy out of a bullet that I've had difficulty finding accuracy from. So it's worth a shot. Plus, I've got a ton of Reloder 15 on hand, so that makes it an easy choice. Last up is our Sierra, the 123 grain Sierra Matchking. Now, with this guy, I've found myself into one of those very confusing situations where I'm looking at some conflicting load data. And a lot of it has to do with overall length, I believe. The Sierra load data uses an overall length of 2.810. So right out there at full magazine length. Let me set a bullet down here into a case and we'll have a look at what it looks like at 2.810. All right, this is 2.812, but it's close enough. That's another really good usage for these cases that you have a split in. And, you know, looking at seating depth is pretty easy with these guys. Now you can see where the boat tail starts, and you can see about how much of our case, how much of our neck is contacting the bearing surface of the bullet. Let me make a quick Sharpie mark. There we go. Maybe that'll help if it's not coming across well on camera. That is enough. I wouldn't want to go much less, but it does seem shootable. And actually, if I look at my notes from the last video, my tests from the last video show the maximum overall length for this gun with this bullet at the time was 2.891. I have to imagine our throat's probably worn in just a little bit now. So maybe we picked up a couple thousandths, but more or less 80 thousandths off the lands at this seating depth. So I'll tell you right now, this is what we're going to go with. This is what we're going to shoot, and we'll see how it goes. But if you go over to the Hodgdon data, they shoot an overall length of 2.670, 140 thousandths shorter. That's a lot. All right, here's one more or less at 2.670. Regardless, you won't be able to see where the boat tail starts. It's going to be just a little bit below the neck. Now, this is still a pretty good looking round, right? I mean, that doesn't look overly short, but it's 140 thousandths shorter than what Sierra uses in their data. Now, as you might imagine, the max charge for this overall length is significantly less than the max charge for the Sierra overall length. So at this overall length, Hodgdon shows a max charge of 44.2 grains with Winchester 760. That's what we're talking about. Winchester 760, 44.2 grains. Sierra, at their longer overall length, shows a max charge of 46.0 grains. So almost 2 full additional grains of powder at the Sierra overall length. That's a lot of difference. That's a whole lot of difference. Now with the Nosler Accubond, we did go ahead and go up to Nosler's maximum. But here with the 123 Sierra, I'm not going to flirt with the max. Either max. So we're going to use or no, we're going to use Sierra's overall length of 2.810, but we're only going to go up to 44.0 grains. So that's 2 grains below the Sierra Max, and it's even 2/10 of a grain below the Hodgson Max with that much shorter overall length. So hopefully we won't get ourselves into trouble. Should be nicely below max. So that's our load data for today. Pretty straightforward stuff. Casting a wide net, trying some fast powder, trying some varying weights. Should make for a fun test while we get the rest of this brass fire formed. And speaking of brass, that's basically going to be step one. I want to go ahead and run all these cases through the sizing die to straighten out the neck. I'm going to deburr and chamfer the case mouth to get rid of any boogers. And then I'm going to put a primer in them. So I already showed you the sizing die setup, so I guess I'll see you guys about the time I'm ready to start priming. So I'm trying out a new hand primer that I just picked up about a week ago. So far so good. It's the Frankfurt Arsenal Perfect Seat hand primer. I still like my RCBS hand primers, don't get me wrong, but this guy's got an adjustable seating depth that I wanted to try out, so I've been playing around with it here. Once I get some more experience with it and get a better feel for how it works and the best way to adjust the seating depth and that sort of junk, I'll be doing a standalone video on it, but you might start seeing it pop up in a video or two here and there as I test it out. Seems to do a pretty nice job, and the price isn't completely ridiculous, so I thought I'd give it a shot. All right, there's the last one. So this brass, of course, I did finish resizing it, and I hit the mouth with a deburring and chamfering tool inside and outside of the neck. It makes that crazy nails on a chalkboard sort of sound, so I figured I'd spare you guys from having to listen to that. But at this point, we are completely ready for powder. So I want to start out with Reloder 17 and the 143 grain Eld X. So I'm going to get the other powders and bullets off the table and get these guys measured out. So I'm keeping things pretty simple here on the powder weighing thing. Just a least scoop, 1/10 of a grain scale. I'm not agonizing over every single kernel of powder. Plus or minus 1/10 here is just fine. And I'll tell you what, if we see standard deviation numbers as good in this video as we did in the last video, we may never agonize over every kernel of powder here as far as weight, charge weight goes, as we move forward with 6.5 Creedmoor. Or is it 6.5 Creedmoor? Had a lot of good recommendations in the comments section of the previous videos. 6.5 Creedmoor, I liked that one a lot. And half Baker's dozen Creedmoor, or was it Baker's half dozen Creedmoor? Something like that. I'm digging that. I might sprinkle that guy in occasionally. So I'm almost done here with our first 20 charges for the 143 Eld X. So let's go ahead and get to bullet seating. All right, for the 143 ELD, we've got the perfect seating stem, right? We've got a seating stem that fits this guy absolutely perfect. So I need to swap it into the die. Let's try and do it from below this time. Nah, the clip's too far up in there. I can't reach it. All right, so I'm going to remove the seating stem then. I picked the wrong angle here, didn't I? Try that. All right, off with the adjustment stem, I should say. Right, that's our micro adjustment stem that's been working pretty well for us so far. And I need something long. Here's a Lee decapping pin. Let's see if it's long enough and small enough. Yep, there we go. Out with that stem. And all right, seating stem in. Back out the adjuster a little bit. And 2.800 is our goal. 2.926, so let's go down 125. Actually, there's 120. See what that looks like first. 2.806. I'll go ahead and seat a couple. 2.806, 2.804, and 2.806. So I'll tell you what, let's just split the difference. Let's go down 5 and run them back through. Okay, and now we've got our our proper insert for our bullet comparator. So let's compare how consistent they are to the tip. Like there's a 2.798, 2.804, 2.8, 2.798, and 2.801. Tell you what, I'm going to try and measure them one more time and get them in order of shortest to longest. All right, 2.798 to 2.804 being the longest. So we're seeing 6 thousandths of variation when measured to the tip. So now let's switch to the bullet comparator and see if we see that same amount of difference. Now this is basically just like the Headspace comparator, except a much smaller hole, and this is going to measure to the ogive of your bullet. Now since our seating stem contacts the ogive of our bullet during bullet seating, this is generally a much more consistent measurement. So 2.161, 2.162, 2.161, 2.161. Yeah, this one does 2.163. This is the longest round to the tip, and it's the longest round to the ogive as well. Let me go ahead and run it back through one more time. It kind of helped a little bit. It's saying 2.162 here, but it was saying 2.163 a second ago. So I think it is still the longest one, but now we're looking at, to the ogive, we're looking at 2 thousandths of variation rather than what did we see, 6 when measured to the tip. And this is where it counts. All right, so everything's pretty boring from this point forward. I'm going to seat the rest of these 143 Eld X bullets. I'm going to go back to measuring powder. I'm going to seat some more bullets. And that's pretty much it. About the only interesting thing I can think of that I might be doing here is as I switch bullets, I will be checking to see which seating stem fits the bullet the best and swapping it out if necessary. But I think I've shown that enough times at this point that that's a little bit redundant. So if anything exciting happens, I'll definitely let you know, but I'm thinking I might just see you guys out at the range. All right, so in the last video, I think I mentioned putting a higher power scope on this guy, but I want to go ahead and just continue testing a little bit more with this 4-12 by 44 Vortex Crossfire 2 scope. That way, those of you who bought the Vortex package like I did, or are considering it, you know, can get a better feel for what this scope is actually capable of. But to make up for it just a little bit, I've dusted the cobwebs off of the lead sled here. I'm going to try and use this guy. Maybe it'll help me out. I do have a 25-pound bag of shotgun shot to help stabilize it a little bit. So we'll see. It's actually been quite a while since I've shot with this guy. But I figure we'll try it out today and see what happens. Man, every time I look down at this 70 rounds ready to rock, man, it just makes me excited. That is a whole lot of fun right there. And I'm really looking forward to today's testing. Zero pressure. I've got all the time in the world. It is just after noon. So I've got like 5+ hours of daylight left. I've got plenty of batteries charged for all of my cameras. The weather's good, a little bit of breeze, but nothing bad. So I've got no excuses for bad groups today. I am going to go ahead and shoot everything suppressed today. And I'm going to throw my MagnetoSpeed chronograph into the mix. I don't think we did this in the last video. It really usually doesn't cause any problems, especially when it's on the, when it's hanging off the suppressor. It seems to be a pretty minor difference. And I want to get some good velocity numbers for today. So I need to go hang my target and let's get shooting. All right, let's start things off with 143 grain Eld X with Reloder 17. Our first load is 39 grains. I am going to go ahead and feed these guys from the magazine. So let's get started. All right, is that group as good as I think it is? I'm gonna have to go in and get my spotting scope. The old 12 power scope just ain't gonna do it today. All right, that one over in the center makes it a little less impressive than I first thought it was. But still, cold gun, cold shooter, it's not bad. Moving on, next up is 39.5 grains. All right, 40.0 grains. All of the brass has been looking really good so far. And no problems here with 40. So our velocity seems to be rising pretty slowly. What are we up to? 25.65. I should have written down what the book predicted. I'll tell you what, while the barrel cools down, I'm gonna go grab the book because I'm curious how much we're lagging behind. Yeah, it looks like we're lagging behind the Hornady manual right about 100 feet per second. So that's pretty much exactly what we saw in the last video with our factory ammo. Lagging behind about 100 feet per second. Which is reasonable because, you know, they use a 24-inch test barrel. All right, our last load with the 143 grain Eld X is 40.5 grains of Reloder 17. Let's see how it does. All right, so that last group opened up just a little bit, but that's respectable. Velocity made it up to 26.13. That's pretty good. So let's move on to the 129 grain Nosler Accubond. All right, so the wind is trying to make my life difficult. Getting a little bit gusty on me here, but you know what? That's supposed to be one of the advantages of 6.5 millimeter, right? These high BC bullets, they just cut right through the wind. Has no effect, my friend. So next up is the 129 grain Nosler Accubond long range. As I think I mentioned, this bullet has not shot well for me in 6.5 Grindle. So I'd love to see it shoot better here in the Creedmoor. And we're using their most accurate powder, Reloder 15. So starting off 37.0 grains. Let's see what happens. All right, well, that's a disappointing start. Not surprising, but disappointing still. Okay, 37.5 grains is next. Okay, that one didn't go off. I don't know if I didn't. I've been kind of short stroking my bolt a couple times here today, I've noticed. Yeah, I didn't get around in the chamber. Magazine's in. Yeah, that was it. I just short stroked it. All right, another disappointing group with the Accubonds. So let's move forward. This is 38.0 grains. All right, looks like maybe the groups are tightening here as we get higher in charge weight. 38.5 is next. Brass still looks pretty good. All right, last up, 39.0 grains. Let's hope this trend of tightening groups continues. All right, that was an interesting shift in point of impact. Very interesting indeed. All right, so in an attempt to make this target as confusing as possible, I added a couple more spots. And at this point, I want to go ahead and shoot a couple more groups with our factory ammo. The first is the 129 grain interlock in the Hornady American Whitetail. So we'll shoot a 5-shot group of it on the left-hand dot, and then next up we'll shoot the 140 grain Federal non-typical. So first up here, 129 grain Hornady. All right, so that was a pretty darn good looking group with the Hornady American Whitetail. So next up is 5 rounds of the 140 grain Federal non-typical Whitetail. All right, those groups were pretty good with both of our factory ammo. At least a little bit of an improvement over what we saw in the last video. So that's good. I wanted to give them that opportunity, right? The gun's nice and broken in. We've laid down plenty of copper in it. The gun's warmed up, the shooter's warmed up, everything's warmed up. Perfect conditions for them to show what they've got. So not too bad. All right, folks, we got a little bit of a problem here with the last set of groups. With our 123 grain Sierra Match Kings, which you should be watching right now. Look at this crazy stuff. Kind of started out okay and then just went nuts. My scope came loose. The little thumb screws here came totally loose and my freaking scope was just jiggling on the gun. Okay, not quite to that extent, but pretty close. And I didn't figure out what was going on until I was carrying my gun back to the house. You know, thinking, wow, man, those Match King groups sure were crazy. And I started feeling this weird jiggling noise. Like as I was carrying the gun by my side, I could feel something like this was banging up against my leg or something, and I could feel it like something's making a weird noise. Both screws had just come completely loose. So if you end up with these Vortex bases, definitely want to put a little torque on these dudes. But I mean, to be honest, man, those freaking lead sleds are nuts. All right, that puts some serious force on a gun. And I think that's what was causing, what caused the problem. But yeah, at this point, let's just have a look at the groups. And let's continue talking about the 123 grain Match King for a second. because, well, like I said, the first two groups weren't bad, a 114 and then an 821. But look at these standard deviation numbers: 52.8, 54.9, 24.8, 46.2, and then by some miracle, the last one was a 6.7. But the vast majority of the time here, the velocities were just all over the place with Winchester 760. Now, Winchester 760 is a ball powder. It says it right there, ball powder, a spherical powder. And some of these, I don't know a lot specifically about Winchester 760, but I know a lot of ball powders are very, have the reputation of being very hard to ignite. And I think that characteristic kind of carries through just to the nature of ball powders. So we might be in a situation where, these small primer pockets and our small rifle primers are doing great with the extruded powders, but they're going to fall on their face with the ball powders. And that'll probably be the first test we do where we pit the small rifle primers against the large rifle primers, is with some ball powders, because you put a nice big hot large rifle primer in these guys and maybe this stuff lights off a little bit better and gives us some more consistent velocities. I don't know for sure. That's my working theory right now. Really happy about the tightening up of our factory ammo here. 1.21 inches with the Hornady and 0.912 inches with the Federal. That's, 2 or 3/10 smaller than the groups were during our last video, so that was really good to see. The Accubond long range continues to disappoint. Not the worst thing in the world, right? Our worst group was 1.63 inches. Our best group was 1.12 inches. Not exactly terrible, but if we compare it to the 143 grain Eld X, 946, 665, 721, and our biggest group was the last one here at a 1.11. So the worst group with the Eld X was better than the best group with the 129 grain Accubond long range. That's just what I've seen out of that bullet, and it's a little bit disappointing. I like the signs from the Sierra Matchking. It looks like this bullet, it's generally pretty easy to tell whether a bullet is going to like a gun. Well, just like, our previous test with the 143 grain Eld X was with H4350, and it shot well. Felt pretty confident that when we switched to Reloder 17, it was going to continue to shoot well. Crappy bullets generally shoot crappy, and good bullets generally shoot good. And as I get more experience and test more things in more different platforms, it seems to really hold true. I just noticed this group here with the Accubond long range, I've missed that little guy right there. The 5th shot. Yeah, so that's probably worse than a 1.46 inch group. Whatever. Who cares? It's a crappy bullet, and I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is I'm just to the point where it's probably not worth the time to go chasing 15 different powders with this Accubond long range when we know that, this is kind of how it shoots. It'll certainly vary some with different powders, but the odds are good, I think, that it's never going to give us the performance we're seeing from the Hornady. We'll test it though. By God, I've still got a couple boxes of them left, so maybe we'll try it out. Work on that theory. I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to find a powder that it loves and shoot some itty bitty groups, but I don't know. Tell you what, let's have an up close look at the brass. So there's not a lot I want to show you with the brass, but I'm still trying to learn this gun's language, because every gun is different. And one thing I want to show you is this guy really does seem to crater primers. So you can see around, the edge of the firing pin mark is raised up. And you could call that a cratered primer and not be wrong. A lot of guns, that's absolutely a pressure sign and a big problem. It's a sign that, yep, pretty soon you're going to start piercing the primers. But with this gun, it just seems to be, normal. And I've seen this on others. Like, you can pick any piece of brass in this box right now It looks exactly the same way. Just grabbing ones at random here. Now, another thing I am seeing, this is a good one here. You see how there's a little bit of a shiny mark? If I can get the light just right. Yeah, it's right by the R there. If I can get this, get it to shine just right. But it's just a little bit of a scrape, smear sort of mark. And I'm seeing that on quite a few pieces. But it doesn't seem to be a pressure sign, or at least I don't think it is at this point. I'm seeing it on our low charges and high charges. But it's not always there, but it's there pretty often. There it is. If you can just see that one little shiny mark. So at this point, I'm not considering it a problem or a sign of pressure just because I'm seeing it on all different charge weights. And, like we covered, the minor cratering, I'm not considering that pressure either. I was trying to have a look at the firing pin a little bit earlier to see if maybe I could, see what was going on there that is kind of cratering, but it doesn't seem to be like way oversized. Like I thought the firing pin hole might be much larger than the firing pin itself, and there was just, a little open area around the firing pin that was causing the cratered look. But I don't know. Like I said, I'm still getting to know the gun. That's what you got to do with every gun that you're reloading for, is just get to know it. Get to know what's normal so that you can recognize what's not normal. And if you look at all of the primers, nice and rounded. I haven't seen any flattening with primers so far. Like there you go. These 5 rows were with Reloder 15. Then this was the one I really thought we might hit some pressure. Remember, this was the Nosler load data. We went up to their max charge of, 39? Yep, it was 39 grains. So this 5th row here, I was thinking we might see some pressure, but everything looks good so far. I have noticed some circular marks from the ejector. Let me see if I can find some of those. Here's one. There we go. Right on top of that star is a little bit of a circular mark where the ejector was. This was not a top charge. This was our next to highest charge with Winchester 760. But I'm also kind of seeing this occasionally, and it doesn't seem to be related to the higher charges. So at this point, with what we've shot, I just haven't really noticed anything yet that I can definitively say, like, yep, there's the first sign. I'm sure we'll get there soon enough. But whether it's going to be flattening, whether it's going to be a worsening of the cratering, whether it's going to be a pierced primer, or whether it'll be markings on the face, I don't know yet. We'll find out together. So, at 115, 110 rounds or so through the gun, I'm still very pleased. I'm still very optimistic about the type of performance we're going to see. I need to buy another box of 143 grain Eld X bullets because it clearly likes those guys. It clearly liked the 130 grain Sierra Game King. I can't wait to try the 135 grain Burger Classic Hunter. So those will probably be our next couple of videos, is focusing in on 1 or 2 of those guys, throwing some more powders at them, seeing what sort of velocities we can get up to, and seeing what sort of groups we can shoot with a tight scope. Because it's not like that scope just, completely loosened in one shot. It was probably slowly loosening up, and I'm wondering whether, how much effect it had, even on the better groups for the day. And I guess for that reason, I should probably go ahead and give the Accubond long range the benefit of the doubt. I don't know. So I'm sorry about the audio. When I was out on the range, my stupid audio recorder here on the back, the auto level switch got switched to on, so it was ramping the audio level up and down. Oh God, it was awful. I'll tell you what, folks, I've been riding the struggle bus here for a couple weeks with some technical problems. I've thought a couple times about making videos to just apologize for not getting out more videos. Like the pace has been super slow, but actually I've got one of the main culprits here. This is a battery for the camera you're watching on right now. This battery went bad, and it took me a while to figure out what it was doing. What normally happens is, the battery's in the camera, the battery goes dead, the camera stops recording, it saves that file that's in progress to the memory card, and then it shuts itself off, and then you put in a new battery, and you're back in the game. Well, this guy started failing so fast that the camera didn't have time to write the file in progress, or complete the file that was in progress. So I went like 10 days where I was just missing random video files. Like I'd finish up a video and sit down and to start editing, and I would just be missing whole chunks of video. So a couple videos recently I've had to either reshoot a part or explain to you guys that a part was missing and that I was trying to make up for it. Oh, just a mess. But I finally figured out, I finally tracked it down to this battery. I ordered some new batteries, so I've got new batteries. And the other thing that went bad on me is my normal microphone that I mainly use. I was walking back in from the range after a range session, and this thing was kind of trailing behind me, and it got closed in the door, and it was bad. That's what screwed up the last video, the 6.5 Grindle video, was this guy. But this is something like I knew I should have had a spare on hand, but I didn't. So that's cost me some frustrations. I got a new one finally in the mail yesterday, and that's what you're hearing me on right now. So I'm sorry if this comes across as whining and complaining, but since I'm begging you guys for money and you're coming through, I feel a serious obligation to get videos put out, right? If I can't get 4 or 5 videos a week out, I don't feel like I'm holding up my end of the bargain, and I definitely have not been holding up my end of things here over the last couple weeks. So fresh batteries, new microphone. Hopefully now we can maybe, start getting some videos cranked out. The other problem is, like, it seems like every video I do is just this big hour-long, way too in-depth sort of thing lately. But they, I feel like they've been needed videos, right? It's not been fluff. Like, I've been trying to cover some new stuff, and it's just made for some really long videos, which I don't care how good my batteries and microphone are working. I can't put out those every single day. I can put out the 20-minute video, right? I can film one of those in a day, but the big long ones, whew, they just take too long to edit and then upload and all of that. So, all right, I'm rambling. Thank you guys for all the support. You can come to patreon.com/reloading if you'd like to support the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.